storyteller.
My life as a tour guide at Okotnik Castle, a majestic yet somber Gothic architectural marvel on the outskirts of St. Petersburg, had turned me into an ironclad skeptic. With thousands of tourists passing through its gates every year, and countless tales spun about Count Okotnik rumored to have met a tragic end within these very walls, I firmly believed it was all just marketing theatrics. I'd led countless night tours, witnessed every kind of prank from visitors, and never once encountered anything genuinely anomalous. The castle, to me, was merely cold stone and old folklore. Yet, on that fateful night, my skepticism was shattered by a terrifying truth. A truth etched into my soul like an indelible scar. An experience I truly saw and felt firsthand. It was a stifling summer night, thick with an oppressive stillness. 2 years ago, a group of American tourists, excited for the special night tour, gathered in the grand ballroom, rumored to be the epicenter of supernatural occurrences. I was passionately recounting tales of the Count's extravagant balls when, without warning, a bone-chilling cold swept through the room. Not the damp chill of a cellar, but an indescribable frigidity, as if ice were melting directly within my chest. I felt every single hair on my arms stand on end, goosebumps erupting all over my skin. Whispers began to ripple through the group, followed by the faint shattering of teeth. One particularly lively female guest suddenly began trembling violently, her eyes wide as she stared into the void.
Someone is here. I feel an unusual cold. A profound sadness is engulfing me.
Her voice was barely a whisper, almost a sob. Before she finished speaking, something far more terrifying occurred. All the lights in the room abruptly extinguished, plunging the ballroom into complete darkness, a thick, suffocating blackness that swallowed everything. A small scream, then an unnerving silence, broken only by the ragged breaths of those around me. I tried to maintain my composure, fumbling to turn on my phone's flashlight, its weak beam sweeping across pale, corpse-like faces. But then, from the opposite corner of the room, where the large portrait of Count Okotnik hung, a sound emerged. It was a slow, heavy footstep, as if someone were dragging their feet in old, heavy boots, each ghostly step echoing rhythmically in the empty space, the distinct clack of wooden heels on cold stone. That footstep did not belong to anyone in our group. We were all frozen in silence, holding our breath in terror, as if our lives hung precariously on each of that approaching sound. It drew closer and closer, each step like a hammer blow to my chest, relentless, never slowing. I distinctly felt a chilling presence, an ancient resentment enveloping the space, suffocating the air, freezing my lungs. When the footsteps were mere feet from me, I saw it. A faint, white, hazy mist, taking the shape of a tall figure, unexpectedly gliding past my line of sight, passing right between me and the group of tourists, just inches away. I froze in place, utterly unable to move, my body nailed down by overwhelming fear and the sheer haunting presence. Immediately after that terrifying moment, the lights flickered back on, but their illumination was insufficient to dispel the darkness within my soul. The entire group sighed in relief, but their faces remained ashen, their eyes still wide with shock. I looked back at the corner of the room. There was nothing, only the Count's portrait gazing down, but now his eyes seemed imbued with a profound melancholy, a deep sadness I had never noticed before. Even though I saw nothing more, the memory of that night continued to haunt me. The footsteps, the bone-chilling air, and especially the sensation of the pain and loneliness conveyed by that spirit were seared into my mind. I truly saw and felt that presence, an experience that irrevocably changed how I perceived the world. From that night on, I no longer viewed ghost stories as mere entertainment or tourist attractions. I had genuinely experienced something beyond all scientific explanation, something that completely transformed my understanding of reality, turning me from a skeptic into a believer in the existence of trapped, wandering spirits. My small village, nestled among the lush green rice fields of Japan, has been home to my family for hundreds of years. Right next to our house stood an ancient temple and a long-abandoned well, overgrown with vines and weeds, looking eerily ominous under the moonlight. The elders in the village always whispered chilling tales of vengeful spirits haunting the well, especially on full moon nights. They spoke of a young woman who ended her life in the well and whose soul could not find peace. I, a farmer who spent his life rooted in the practicalities of the land, always dismissed these as mere scare tactics for children, elaborate fables spun by the elderly to keep youngsters away from the dangerous well. But one night, my stubborn skepticism came at a cost, a terrifying experience that irrevocably changed my belief in the tangible world. A sorrowful melody I truly heard from the realm of the dead. It was a stifling July night, the full moon hanging huge and bright like a colossal silver mirror in the sky. About 10 years ago, the heat made sleep impossible. My body was tired, but my mind was restless. I went out onto the porch to catch some breeze, hoping for a moment of peace in the quiet of the night. Suddenly, from the direction of the temple and the well, I heard a song. It was a woman's voice, clear yet profoundly mournful, humming an ancient melody I had never heard before. A tune like a lament echoing from hundreds of years ago, each note seeming to seep into my very bones. This song was not from a radio or TV. It was utterly natural, completely real, as if someone were standing right there, singing in the pitch black. I froze, goosebumps erupting all over my body, a chilling sensation running down my spine despite the oppressive heat. My heart pounded furiously, so hard I could feel it reverberating in my chest. The song repeated, each line tearing at my soul, carrying an indescribable sorrow, a boundless despair. I suddenly remembered my grandmother's story about the young woman who jumped into the well out of desperation, and how her spirit still lingered there. I tried to dismiss these superstitious thoughts, telling myself I was imagining things, that it might be the wind or a night bird. But the song was too real, too clear to be an illusion. It was calling out a primal fear deep within me. I forced myself to suppress my fear, taking heavy, deliberate steps, my heart drumming like a frantic drum. I approached the fence, peering towards the well. There was no one, only darkness, and the faint moonlight illuminating the moss-covered stones of the well's rim. Yet the song continued, louder, clearer, as if the singer were standing right at the mouth of the well, facing directly towards me, uttering mournful cries, lyrics demanding something from the living world, an unending wail of lament. I could feel an ice-cold draft, a damp, earthy smell mixed with the scent of decay emanating from that spot, a stench of death and entrapment, as if the entire well were exhaling the breath of rot, even on that hot summer night. I recoiled, intending to run, but my feet felt nailed to the ground, unable to move, mesmerized by that sorrowful song, an irresistible pull. Then, just as suddenly, the song abruptly stopped. A small aye, a sudden, desperate shriek, cut short, stifled in the throat, followed by a dry, resonant, plop dot dot dot, plop dot dot, single quotes echoing from deep within the well, as if a heavy object had just fallen into the water, dragging a life down into the abyss. And then came a deathly silence, a silence more terrifying than any sound, a silence that seemed to swallow both space and time, leaving only the frantic pounding of my own heart in my ears. I stood there, heart hammering, until dawn finally broke, the first rays of sunlight piercing through the leaves, chasing away the shadows and the terror. Only then did I dare to return to my house, drenched in cold sweat, my legs still trembling uncontrollably. From that night on, I never dared to approach that abandoned well after dark again. I believe that the girl's spirit is still there, trapped in her own tragedy, reliving that terrifying final moment, and she continues to sing her mournful song, seeking release, or perhaps justice, or perhaps simply understanding. I truly heard that lament. It was not imagination. It was an echo from the past, a chilling reminder of things beyond our control. The elders' stories were no longer mere scare tactics. They were warnings, whispers from the other side, about what truly exists beyond our comprehension, about sorrows that never find peace. That experience was seared into my mind, reminding me of an unseen world where spirits still wander, seeking their rest. As a flight attendant in Italy, my job frequently required me to travel by night train to different cities. I was well accustomed to long journeys. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels usually lulled me into a deep sleep. I believed only in what I could see and touch, and ghosts had never been part of my reality. I always dismissed them as products of vivid imagination. I used to scoff at stories of restless spirits roaming old trains. But one night, on a fateful journey from Milan to Rome, I had a terrifying experience, an encounter that irrevocably altered my belief in this world, turning me into a living witness to what I once considered absurd and inexplicable. A true entity I saw and became haunted by. Around 1 a.m., I lay in my bunk in the sleeping compartment, trying to drift into a deep sleep after a long day of work. The train was passing through a deserted rural area. Outside the window, there was only oppressive darkness, occasionally punctuated by the faint, distant glow of a farmhouse light. I suddenly awoke with an eerie, chilling sensation at the back of my neck, as if someone were standing right beside me, staring at me with a very heavy presence, making the air in the compartment thick and hard to breathe. I opened my eyes, and in the dim light from the overhead night lamp, I saw a woman with long, dark, disheveled hair, wearing an old, white, mud-stained dress with a few tears, standing right by my bunk, mere inches from me. She said nothing, only stood there, staring at me with empty, black, lifeless eyes, devoid of any light or emotion, like two deep abysses. A terrifying silence enveloped the compartment. The distant clatter of the train wheels faded, as if I were in another dimension. I froze, my body paralyzed by overwhelming terror, unable to move even a single finger. I tried to scream, but my throat felt constricted, unable to produce any sound, only the frantic thumping of my heart in my ears. I rubbed my eyes, trying to convince myself I was dreaming, that this was just an illusion born of fatigue and lack of sleep. But when I opened my eyes again, she was still there, motionless, a hazy yet terrifyingly real apparition, her eyes seemingly piercing through me, staring straight into my soul, a feeling as if she were waiting for something, or wanted to take me with her. The air in the compartment suddenly grew inexplicably cold, the temperature dropping noticeably, as if ice were melting directly in the sealed room, even though the heating system was running at full capacity. A faint scent of dried jasmine mixed with damp earth and a faint, sickly smell of blood, a scent both hauntingly familiar and evocative of death and despair, wafted into my nostrils, making my stomach churn. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears streaming down my temples, muttering to myself, "This is just a dream, just a dream. I can't be seeing this." I took deep breaths, counting in my head, hoping that when I opened my eyes, everything would vanish, returning to normal. When I finally gathered the courage to open my eyes, the woman had vanished. I let out a sigh of profound relief, but my heart was still pounding wildly, each beat threatening to burst from my chest. My entire body was drenched in cold sweat, despite the chilling air in the compartment. I tried to compose myself, desperately trying to convince myself that I had been too tired, that it was all just a hallucination, that it was over. But then, just a moment later, As I was regaining a semblance of calm, I heard a very soft sigh, a heavy, mournful sigh, as if someone were right beside me, breathing cold air onto the back of my neck. I distinctly felt the frigid breath on my hair. I turned my head towards the window, and through the dim, reflective glass of the night, I saw the woman's silhouette again. She wasn't standing, but perched precariously on the opposite seat, her body slightly tilted towards me, looking directly at me through the reflection in the glass with a grotesque, mocking smile. That smile held no benevolence. It was cold, scornful, and utterly malicious, as if she were reveling in my absolute terror, challenging my sanity. Her lifeless eyes, through the reflection, seemed to gleam menacingly, and from them I felt a surge of anger, an unquenchable resentment bubbling up, a dark energy engulfing me. I let out a blood-curdling scream, leaping from my bunk, my body trembling uncontrollably, my hair standing on end, the scream tearing through the quiet compartment. When I looked directly at the opposite seat, there was no one. The compartment was empty, only me and the terrifying silence. I scrambled out of the compartment, running down the train corridor in utter terror, searching for anyone, any light. When I found the conductor, I recounted the entire story in a state of frantic agitation, my body still shaking uncontrollably. He simply looked at me with an understanding, chillingly knowing gaze, and said softly, his voice full of dark implication, "Ah, this is an old train, and some spirits still linger here. She just wanted company, and she doesn't like being left alone. Perhaps you saw a soul who died on this very train." From that night on, I never dared to travel alone by night train again. Every time I board a train, I feel an invisible gaze upon me, a chilling presence. That experience on the night train was seared into my mind, reminding me of an unseen world where tormented souls still wander, seeking connection, or perhaps simply wishing to haunt the living, until, in the end, we too become a part of that world.